shared, and that was enough to imagine her. Pearly skin over wide, high cheekbones, a glossy widow's peak. We had argued about the details, long curls in a low bun or a waved bob, a siren's full red lips, or the sleepy lids of a jele. But there she was in our minds. And what Lourdes saw in Graciela's face at that moment was the face she had always imagined as belonging to La Güerita del Norte, a shiny-haired güera with pale eyes. On the radio, we listened to a note held long. Little girls at this age, they make things up. They see things that aren't there. They dream with such certainty. They imagine betrayals and romances. They resent secrets. But we had years to compare notes. After the song ended on the radio, Graciela was herself again, unremarkable like the rest of us. Though we suppose whatever that meant was different to each one of us. What had made her features shift? A trick of the light or the song? Could she change our faces too? Lourdes thought so. Make me look like La Güerita del Norte, Lourdes said. Lourdes had long, brittle hair that tangled at the ends, and her sister Maria took a machete from the cupboard and set to work fanning out her sister's hair, determining where to make the first cut. Later that night, when we were all falling asleep, Lourdes' hair lay in piles like dull branches around our bodies, and Graciela told us about Duende. He's about this tall, Graciela said, stacking her palms, fingers to the base of her wrist, and he comes to the window and says a little prayer. Liar, Lourdes said, though even then she had a feeling that Graciela was not lying. What does he look like? Asked Cora. After pausing a moment, Graciela pressed down on her nose and said, like in the puppet show that visited from the capital, a face like rotten fruit, but nice. Buchinella, these puppets were called. Remember this strange word later on, when the same troupe came over our mountains and performed for children who were not our own. We had heard of Cipitillo, the dwarf with backwards feet and an appetite for ash, and we knew the danger of La Bruja's wagon full of headless skeletons, and the duendes came to the windows of beautiful women to bully them with hideous noises. But we'd never seen evidence of this world until that night with Graciela. But then, what did we know of evidence? Graciela rolled over on her back and placed her thumb to her heart, like in the stained glass window from the Stations of the Cross. It wasn't just that she was beautiful. That we understood. The rest of her story we still don't. We fought sleep that night, took turns tickling each other to stay awake and see the duende. But sleep came anyway, the feeling of stepping down too far in a phantom stare, the stomach's pit dropping. In the morning, Maria swore she met the duende. He kissed me on the lips and used his tongue. Mentirosa! Lourdes shouted, awakening Graciela, who lay beside her. And when Graciela opened her eyes, Lourdes shouted again, "Ay, they're purple!" Which woke Lucia up. And dutifully, Lucia began to scream. Lucia's screams woke up the rest of us. Rubbing eyes, we began to follow Lourdes' commands. It's too dark in here. Get some light so we can see better. After locating a match, we held it to Graciela's right eye and then to the left. We dragged Graciela outside and had her lie on her back, her suddenly violet eyes open to the sun, rising in pink strips over the western volcanoes. We took turns straddling her ribcage, rubbing our noses against hers, seeing our eyes mirrored in her pale ones. Graciela, the most ticklish of us all, laughed and laughed. Just behind our tumbling bodies stood an immense ceiba tree that had grown for 500 years. The tree's vast, unruly branches held thousands of birds, which Cora had always been the best at spotting. She taught us their names: red-throated parakeets, jewel-bright, needle-nosed, green-striped vireos, puff-capped cedar waxwings, fat pheasant cuckoos, yellow-legged shining honey creepers, dazzling violet saltwings, cheery white-collared mannequins, and dozens of torogoses, the clock birds with pendulous heliotrope tail feathers. We've always called their ceiba home, the clock tree. Each day after the sun has risen fully, the birds fly from the tree in thick packs, tearing bright, shrieking arcs across the morning sky. And in the evenings, the workers go home after the birds return to their tree for the night in the same rush of brilliant bodies. Las viejas, our grandmothers, used to say that our ancestors grew from the roots of the clock tree. And funny enough, sometimes we return at the foot of the ceiba, awakening in our decrepit bodies beneath a canopy of dozing birds and wide green leaves. The birds were leaving the ceiba tree now, and from the hill by the finca's sorting room, where we tumbled with Graciela, we could see our mothers walking in a line over the hills to the fields. After we had tugged on our uniforms and kissed our mothers, Lourdes and Maria's mother showed her displeasure with Lourdes' haircut by giving each girl a perfunctory slap on the bottom. And we had slugged down our breakfasts of coffee and powdered milk that our mother shared with us. We began the walk that wound down through the village to the school inside the church. "How did this happen to your eyes?" Lourdes demanded of the morning air. Cora linked arms with Graciela, and the two began striding ahead of the rest of us. "Your eyes! Last night they were just black," Lucia said, running up to Graciela and Cora. "Well, dark brown, like coffee beans," Maria said. "And now," Lourdes said. "And now they're purple," Lucia said. "Well, mostly still brown," Maria said, "but with a little bit of purple, around the outsides of the brown, and gold, threads of gold." And Graciela only smiled, bright birds soaring from the ceiba behind her in the wake of her new morning's face. All that day at school, the ladybugs landed on our hands and feet. We counted 17 of them crawling through Lourdes' hair through the catechism. A bright orange one landed on the nun's forehead. 3 ruby reds clustered on the chalk that Graciela used to trace hopscotch onto the compacted dirt in the schoolyard. The ladybugs fluttered onto the waxy pages of the hymnal Cora and Lucia shared in the pew, bright vermilion gems, as if they had been scattered by La Virgencita herself. We smiled up at her white stone face from our hymnal and marveled at the ladybugs that moved with slow solemnity over her motionless face, coloring her holy cheeks like rouge. Surely we had seen some miracle, but exactly what the combination of the duende and Graciela's changing face and the ladybugs meant, we couldn't place. At home, the sisters Lourdes and Maria would fight over what Graciela looked like. On occasion, her looks changed overnight, but it seemed equally true that Graciela's face changed all the time, in accordance with who saw her. Even then, we sensed Graciela's face did not change for any of the reasons you might guess. Her face was not a veil for a sexual awakening, and she wasn't a reincarnation of La Virgencita, nor was she particularly moved by the scent of juicy mangoes. Graciela was our friend, a girl like us, and as we got older, we became better at understanding Graciela's strange properties. To Lourdes, Graciela would most often be fair-skinned and black-haired, with eyes at the center of a flame. "See this?" Lourdes would ask her sister Maria, hitting a matchstick against its box. "Mira!" Lourdes would scream, jabbing her finger at the dancing purplish center of the flame. Maria would shake her head, and Lourdes would protest her sister's protest, and the girl's mother, Rosario, would run into the room. "Enough!" Rosario would shout, louder even than Lourdes. "Give me those!" Rosario would snatch the matchbook from her daughter, a matchbook that she had taken as a souvenir years before from a hotel in the capital where she had spent the night with a man who might be the father of Lourdes, or of Maria, or of them both. Our mothers told us about the fathers of our friends, but never about our own. "Her skin is this color," Maria would say, after their mother had gone outside to pull up yucca or feed the chickens. Maria would point to a burlap sack hanging on a hook beside the front door. "This color. And her eyes? Like this," she would say, pointing to the iron skillet over the fire pit. At the center of the skillet was a faint rainbow left by soap and grease. Despite her recent exertions, Lourdes strode calmly to the burlap sack and then to the iron skillet to examine these items against her memory. "But how?" Lourdes would ask. Finally, more quietly, "How could it be?" Whispering now, the sisters would ask each other, "Are you sure her nose is like this, and not like this? And her eyes? I'm sure they're purple, but mostly black and gold." "All right. But what's important is that they're different than before. They're different than yesterday." How puzzling to have a friend whose face was always changing. In any case, we all agreed. Graciela was the most beautiful girl we'd ever seen. And so it was that we came to love Graciela all the more. Her earthly kindness was to us a precious daily gift. We made solemn vows to her of friendship, of secrecy, of devoted attendance, of protection, of eternal fidelity. Absurd. Miraculous face or not, most of the time she was just another child.